Fantastic Mr. Fox is the most high-profile movie release of the week.
So, obviously coming up to half-term, and this, I suppose, therefore, is the big half-term release. It's based on the Roald Dahl book, although it's a Wes Anderson movie. And I think, for my money, it's more a Wes Anderson than a Roald Dahl story. It's done in stop-motion animation and is theoretically, therefore, Wes Anderson's animation debut, although there is some animation in The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Because you remember, you and I saw that together, and there are those animated bits in the middle, and I laughed all the way through them, and you sat absolutely stone-faced.
I think I laughed twice.
Yeah, you laughed twice. I laughed a lot more. I like that film, although I do find a little bit of Wes Anderson goes an awfully long way. So we'll play a clip first. You probably know that the voice cast is incredibly star-studded. It includes George Clooney, Meryl Streep, Jason Schwartzman, Bill Murray, who we shan't speak of in relation to other movies that he's in, and, of course, a cameo by Jarvis Cocker, which we shall come to in a moment. But here is an example of what the Fantastic Mr. Fox, as retold by Wes Anderson and co., sounds like.
Does anybody actually read my column? Your friends ever talk about it?
Of course. In fact, Rabbit's ex-girlfriend just said to me last week, I should read Foxy's column, but they don't get the Gazette. Ash, let's get cracking.
Why would they? It's a rag sheet.
I'm sick.
You're not sick.
I have a temperature.
You don't have a temperature.
I don't want to go.
Hurry up, you're going to be late.
I love the way you handle that.
Your cousin Christopherson's coming on the 6th. I want you to be extra nice to him, because he's going through a very hard time right now.
Where's he going to sleep?
We're going to make a bed for him in your room.
I can't spare the space. Put him in Dad's study.
Dad's study is occupied by Dad. I don't want to live in a hole anymore. It makes me feel poor.
We are poor, but we're happy.
Comme ci, comme ça. Anyway, the views are better above ground. Honey, I'm 7 non-Fox years old now. My father died at 7.5. I don't want to live in a hole anymore. And I'm going to do something about it.
Now, I'm sorry, is it just me? Or does that just sound like a Wes Anderson movie that is not in any way an animated kids movie? Comme ci, comme ça. When was the last time somebody said that in a kids movie? My problem with it is this. I think stop-motion animation itself is a wonderful thing, and particularly in an age in which everything has gone CG and digimation, I think it's really great that people are doing stop-motion. And there is a visual beauty to stop-motion that is pretty much unmatched by any other genre. And you only have to look at the work of Nick Park and Aardman to understand just how good that can be when it's done. But if you compare Fantastic Mr. Fox to the work of Nick Park and Aardman, you realise that what Aardman do that is so brilliant is, firstly, they understand entirely what a genuine family film means. They mean a film in which the jokes will work whether you are 7 or 70, that will genuinely work across the ages. Not that you have characters that are animated, so you think, well, the kids are looking at the animated characters, but the voices are talking like George Clooney and Meryl Streep and talking in that incredibly sort of introverted, navel-gazing, academic, self-obsessed way that so many Wes Anderson films do. If what you want is the Royal Tenenbaums done as an animated Fox feature, then fine. But you're clearly wanting that from a grown-up point of view. For me, the problem with the Fantastic Mr. Fox is it's not a family film or a kids film. It's a film that's made by a bunch of adults sitting round, with a glass of red wine and a copy of, some intellectual publication saying,
Time Out in the Guardian, I'd suggest.
Time Out in the Guardian, yes, but not Fangoria. And saying, wouldn't it be interesting if we made a film that looked like a kids film, but obviously wasn't a kids film? And I think what they've demonstrated in this is just how brilliant things like Wallace and Gromit are, because in, for example, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, there is a film which hits every single mark, which if you are 3 years old, you understand why it's funny. Firstly, because they really understand visual humour. The sequence in Curse of the Were-Rabbit in which Gromit is activating the huge were-rabbit puppet, which is just like a Charlie Chaplin sequence or a Buster Keaton sequence. It's beautiful, silent comedy, right? The problem with Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox is it doesn't know when to stop talking. It's an incredibly talky film. It's a film in which they talk incessantly. And they talk incessantly. I know you're looking at me like, how dare you criticise people.
The thought had occurred to me.
And if I can just dig myself into an even deeper hole than that, it is a film in which, while I'm watching it, the word which comes to mind most of all is smug. So it is... Here am I criticising a film for being overly talky and smug. But essentially, therefore, it's like watching me on screen, and imagine how annoying that would be if I was an animated fox. And the problem with it is that when you do this sort of thing, if what you're genuinely attempting to do is to hit the widest possible audience, you should be veering towards Dahl, because the genius of Dahl is that he was dark and, he had, dark subject matter, but he told those stories in a way that, in the tradition of the Grimm's fairy tales, he understood that darkness and light are essentially a part of what makes something accessible to kids and adults alike. What you have here is them going, well, Let's just make it a Wes Anderson movie. And I really don't think that kids are going to sit there through a talky Wes Anderson movie and get it in the way that they ought to. And it's not a failing of the kids' point, it's a failing of the film. The film is too talky, too full of itself, too smug, too determined to drag everything into Wes Anderson. And it's funny reading the reviews of it. I mean, there have been some incredibly reverential reviews, all written by middle-aged people who like Wes Anderson movies. And I have yet to see somebody like an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old. So I saw that Fantastic Mr. Fox, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I really loved the bit when George Clooney did the joke about existentialism.
I suspect that most people will enjoy it slightly more than you did. The Wes Anderson thing has irritated you a lot, but it looks stunning, and the soundtrack, all banjos and burlives, as I think I might have mentioned before,
yes,
does make it fun.
Well, I think, again, the Jarvis Cocker song is pretty much an example of what's wrong, because there's a section in it in which Jarvis Cocker turns up.
Jarvis was on the show yesterday.
I know he was. Yeah. I listened to him, yes, and I was shouting at the radio. And he turns up as Jarvis Cocker, and he plays a banjo song, right? And this is a hilarious gag if you're old enough to know who Jarvis Cocker is, and if you're old enough to understand that, his back catalogue. If you're a kid, it's just somebody playing. And the funny thing about it is that he plays this song, and at the end of it, the gag is that one of the characters says, "Pete, that's just bad songwriting." And I was the guy in the audience going, "Yep, that was exactly what that was. It was just bad songwriting."
Daniel on this email, "Dear Maxwell and his Silver Hammer, Fantastic Mr. Fox is one of my favourite childhood books, and recently listened to the audiobook version read by Roald Dahl himself. Imagine my disappointment when I saw the trailer for the new adaptation." So this email is just based on watching the trailer, which we've been running here in the cinema. "I'm a big fan of Bill Murray and quite like George Clooney, but the trailer seems to have taken Dahl's wonderfully dark, ribald tale and turned it into a catchphrase-ridden, dumb and gimmicky action film. Haven't seen the film, so I won't entirely pass judgment." I think you have, Daniel. "But it looks like a subpar Wind in the Willows. One wishes that Henry Selick had made it instead." Martin, "Dear Bart and Wacko, so The Fantastic Mr. Fox, alliterative is the title, and thus so must be the review. Does Mark find it to be veritably, a valuably viewable, variable, or vexatiously vacuous videographic vulpine venture?" Vulpine, of course, meaning resembling.
I know what vulpine means.
I'm just reading from the email for those who don't.
Okay. How many people here knew what vulpine meant? There you go.
Okay, overwhelmingly the majority didn't. So when you say, I love it when you ask for a vote and go, "There you are," is it, yes, but it proved the opposite. You were using your Iranian electioneer counting system again. "Oh, look, I appear to have lost. Let's just say I've won that."
Yes.
Has anyone seen Fantastic Mr. Fox, by the way? It's only been out right at the back. Oh, look, there's a microphone right by you. Who are you?
I'm Ash from Ponty.
Hello,
and we
Ash.
went to London Film Festival to watch with college, and I fell asleep in it. All of my classmates hated it, other than my teacher.
We should now but they're absolutely correct. The classmates hate it, but the teacher, "Oh yes, it must be brilliant, it must be marvellous. They're all talking really fast and talking about New York subjects. That must be very clever." That's exactly it.
Anyone? Oh, it's a gentleman here who is also at the London Film Festival, so that's why he's been able to see it. Yes, sir. We'll get that microphone to you, yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, but would you suggest that the problem isn't with the film itself? Because if it was just a Wes Anderson film, he makes brilliant films.
He sometimes makes brilliant films, but he sometimes makes films that are completely full of themselves.
But is the problem with the film itself, or is it in the fact that it's been made and marketed towards kids and coming out at half term? If this was coming out the week before the Oscars, would you have had such a problem with it, do you
Yes,
think?
because it's an adaptation of The Fantastic Mr. Fox, which is a family tale for all of them. If, for example, he said, I've really gone out of my way to make this completely inaccessible to children, I've made it only, accessible to 45, but that's not what they're saying. It is attempting to... I mean, the really strange thing about it is that Wes Anderson clearly is in love with the Roald Dahl thing. He says it's the first book he ever owned. He spent time, in the place where it was written. I mean, he's really done all that research.
I mean, I love the book, and I am quite nervous going into watching it, but I think probably the place for it looks like the London Film Festival rather than half-term week.
Well, I would think that that's true.
Quick comment from the gentleman next to you, then we'll have to take some news and sport. We'll be back for more in just a moment.